Well, I just want to say one thing before I kick off this video, and it is the fact that if you are an Ohio State fan out there wondering to yourself right now, how did we struggle against Maryland? Maryland is not that good of a football team. We have handled this team in years past. Like this is Maryland we're talking about. We are Ohio State. Clearly, there are some of you that have just not been paying attention. As much of an Ohio State fan as I am, I'm also a college football fan. Maryland is a very, very good team. And I said it in my preview prediction video. If you ended up watching that, they have terrific play on the line of scrimmage. Talia Tungavailoa came into the year, I thought, as one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, probably behind the likes of J.J. McCarthy there at Michigan, but he's a really, really good quarterback. There are a lot of really good weapons on that team. That's a very underrated defense. They're very well coached, and I knew that Maryland was going to come into Columbus and keep this one relatively close for at the very least a quarter, maybe even for an entire half. And you know what? Maryland came out there for, what would you guys say, probably the first 40 minutes and really was able to just, well, okay, maybe not the first 40 minutes, maybe like the first 35 minutes. They really were able to hold their own, and it looked like that there was an upset bid happening in Columbus, but the defense settled in. Kyle McCord settled in. The wide receivers settled in, and this was an Ohio State team that scored 27 unanswered points to end this game, and the Buckeyes were able to walk away with the win here. Now, albeit 37-17, definitely does not tell the whole story. Maryland did keep this one close, albeit though, in my opinion, I know there are going to be some people out there that say it's Maryland. It's a team that doesn't really have any reason to compete here in the Big Ten. This is a very well-coached team. Give a lot of credit to Maryland. They came out. They had a really, really solid game plan, and they just ended up playing the style of football that they played, or I should say that they have played all season. And you know what? It worked out really, really well for them. It did. It worked out really, really well. But the superior talent and the depth of Ohio State was finally able to settle in there, and I just got a lot to talk about for this game, got a lot to talk about for things moving forward. So, what's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome to my channel. I do one of these after every single Ohio State game. I am an Ohio State fan. I wear those colors very, very proudly, and I like to talk about Ohio State football, but I like to do more than just that, guys. I like to talk about college football in general. That's what this whole channel is dedicated to. So that's what this whole channel is dedicated to. So if you yourself are a college football fan, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell if you haven't done so already. It tells you when videos get uploaded. Hey, you can keep up with my thoughts on things during the college football season, but there are more ways than that to help me support this channel. You guys are doing one of them right now. Just by watching one of these videos, you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, and anything else you guys are willing and or able to do to help me support this channel. But let's go ahead and dive on into, I know what I assume most of you out there are Ohio State fans watching this video, just to kind of hear someone's thoughts about this game against the Maryland Terrapins. And again, like I said, Maryland is a very, very good team. If you have not been paying attention, maybe you've watched no one else other than Ohio State, and you came in to this one and you saw that red and yellow and black M logo with the Maryland flag underneath it, you probably thought, this one's going to be a piece of cake, right? We're Ohio State, they're Maryland. This should be a fairly easy test. I've had a lot of people, or I should say I had a lot of people messaging me during the game, some of my more casual Ohio State fans I talked to that are like, dang, dude, Maryland is good. And you know what? They are. Now, there were also some people that were messaging me that were saying, how are we struggling against Maryland? And those are the people that, I mean, you can't really do anything about because you tried to tell them that Maryland was good and then they didn't listen. But Maryland, very, very good team. I was very impressed with the way that Maryland was played here. Kind of surprised me that Maryland wasn't even ranked. Now, I know that I didn't personally have them ranked as well. I thought there were some other teams that were playing maybe a little bit better than them and had a little bit of a more impressive body of work. But when I take a look at this Maryland team through in and throughout, the whole narrative surrounding Maryland football has always been, this is a team that can play in September, and then they fall apart as soon as they get into Big Ten play. What Maryland showed me, and I think what Maryland showed the nation in this game, is that Maryland is not just going to be a September team in 2023. This is a Maryland team that, look, this was their tough October game. They have a lot of winnable games for the rest of this month. In fact, I would be honestly kind of a little bit surprised if looking at their schedule here, let me pull it up really fast. They have Illinois at home, then a bye week, then they go on the road to play Northwestern. I would honestly be very, very surprised if Maryland did not go 2-0 in those games. Their big games are going to come in November, so we'll see if Maryland can continue it there. They get Penn State at home. You have to go on the road to play Nebraska. They really grew up this week. And then you get Michigan at home. This was your tough road game. You get Penn State and Michigan at home, and if Maryland can play like they did for the first 35 minutes yesterday and go ahead and play like that for the entire game against Penn State, the entire game against Michigan, I do think there's a real shot that maybe Maryland's not going to be able to beat them, but they're going to be able to give them a very similar scare and maybe end up being a lot closer on the scoreboard than this one does. I think Maryland's fantastic. Credit Taulia Tagovailoa. I thought he played really, really well. That wide receiver too, by the way, Caden Prather. I know he only had 3 catches, but he really, really impressed me throughout the game. Jayshon Jones is another absolutely phenomenal option. This is a Maryland team that was able to get their run game going pretty solidly as well, and they were just able to hit some of those more chunk yardage plays, right? And they were really able to get this Ohio State defense on their heels. And speaking of defense, hey, I give credit to what Maryland was able to do, right? This is a very, very underrated defense, and I know they haven't played a team, when you take a look at the rest of their schedule, that offensively is as good or just anywhere near as good as what the Ohio State Buckeyes brought to the table. So I give a lot of credit to what the Maryland secondary was able to do early, to the Maryland defensive front for being able to get as much pressure as they were able to do on, or as they were able to get on Kyle McCord. With all of that being said, with all of the credit given to Maryland here, Ohio State, that defense, again, it took some time there to settle in as Taulia Tagovailoa and company were really able to drive down the field here, right? So they ended up getting a touchdown on their very, very first drive, and it was a very short field for them. I kind of figured as soon as that weird punt thing happened, I know that Gus Johnson, Joe Klatt were kind of saying like, whoa, it's a fake. They decided to fake it. I don't think that was really what was happening. I just think it ended up being a bad snap. Now, I could be wrong on that. Maybe, again, I haven't watched any post-game interview or anything like that yet. I'm going to do that after this video. But just from watching the play, it just looked very, very awkward. It did not look like that was planned at all, because Cody Simon kind of had to get down there like a second baseman, like a shortstop, to field that ball and then run. You would think that he would get a much better snap if they were going to end up faking that punt. But hey, what do I know? That's why I'm here talking about the game, not on the sidelines coaching it. So then again, very next drive, Maryland's able to go down and score. Buckeyes have to punt it away after an 8-play, 27-yard drive. And then Maryland drives down the field, turns it over on downs. And this is what I have been talking about with the Ohio State defense. This is a defense that mightily improved last year, and it is mightily improved yet again this year as well. I mean, when you go ahead and take a look at some of the plays this defense was making, we're going to talk more about it later. It was phenomenal. 4th down and 1 at the 29-yard line, and Ohio State stuffs the Maryland Terrapins. They did that, I think, twice or maybe even 3 times there in the game against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You had a couple times there where Sam Hartman was trying to run for the first down, and then this Ohio State defense just ended up coming up really, really huge and being able to get those stops. They did that today. You go ahead and fast forward. Maryland's now up 10-0. They get a field goal. Ohio State has to punt it away, and then the spark that the Buckeyes needed. The offense was not really able to get a whole lot going there in the first half, but the Maryland Taulia Tagovailoa just did not necessarily, I don't know if he read Josh Proctor wrong, but he definitely threw the ball a little bit more on the side of Josh Proctor. Josh Proctor, I think, did a very nice job reading the eyes of Taulia, stepping in front of the throw, and he housed it. Took it for the pick six, which is exactly the spark that the Buckeyes needed. They were able to force a punt the very next drive. Later on, Ohio State would be able to go down, score a field goal after a couple more drives. But there is another problem right there, right? You have to come away. You have to come away with a touchdown in that scenario. This is going to be something I feel like is going to plague Ohio State all year long. You had 2nd and 4 at the Maryland 7. Couldn't really do a whole lot. In fact, it was a 1-yard loss. I do believe there. You had 3rd and 5 at the Maryland 8. And then, of course, Kyle McCord gets called for the intentional grounding call, loss of down 10-yard penalty. You're forced to have Jaden Fielding try a field goal. Now, Jaden Fielding's been a very reliable kicker for us. He was able to boot it through. But mistakes like that, and I'm going to talk about Kyle McCord a little bit later here, but just you got to limit those mistakes. I think Ohio State had 10 penalties here in this game. Now, a lot of them are going to fall on that offensive line, which I have a lot to talk about the offensive line here later. But, I mean, hey, Maryland was then able to come out there in the second half. I believe they scored on their very first drive. Yep, they did. 9 plays, 75 yards. They were able to go down and score. The Buckeyes were able to answer there. And then, well, it looked like Maryland was going to start driving down the field again. And then Talia got intercepted again. I believe it was Lathan Ransom just kind of stepping in front of a throw again, being able to pick that ball off. Yep, it was. It was Lathan Ransom able to give it a nice return. And, well, the Buckeyes were able to drive down the field there. But again, only coming away with a field goal. You had 1st and goal at the Maryland 6, 2nd and goal at the Maryland 6, 3rd and goal at the Maryland 5, and then 4th and goal at the Maryland 5, and then you have to end up kicking the field goal there. So twice now where Ohio State has been inside the 10-yard line in this game, and you come away with a field goal instead of touchdowns, which is exactly what the Maryland Terrapins want. If you are an Ohio State fan, I mean, it's definitely a cause for concern. It's definitely one of the issues about this team this season. They need to come away with touchdowns if you get into the red zone. With how good this offense is, that is just a must. With how many playmakers you have, that is just a must. You cannot settle for field goals there, especially when you look at some of the games later down the line on our schedule, especially the one there in Columbus in 2 weeks against the Penn State Nittany Lions. You have to come away with touchdowns. You have to seize, you have to be able to take advantage of every opportunity that you are given. You have to. And again, we'll talk about a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But then really from then on, after that second Talia Tungavailoa interception, it really was just all Buckeyes because there was so there was a just the defense is really able to step up, is what I was trying to say there. Now, albeit, when I also did watch this game, I felt like the defense got a little bit lucky at times because there were definitely a lot of dropped balls by Maryland receivers in this game. Talia was 21 of 41 passing. That is just over 50%. He's a quarterback that, now give credit to this Ohio State secondary, and I do. They were able to come away with some pretty good pass breakups, able to force the 2 picks there, like I've said as well. But there were also a lot of drops by the Maryland receivers in this game. A lot of catches that, or a lot of balls that probably should have been caught, that the Maryland receivers ended up letting fall to the turf. And in that sense, Ohio State did get a little bit lucky there. However, for the most part, I thought this defense did everything that it needed to do. The run defense was really spotty yesterday, but again, it stepped up when it needed to, especially there on that 4th down and 1. There was a 4th down and 3 where they were able to step up as well. Now, Maryland did get some sort of unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that actually ended up flipping possession back to Ohio State there. Can't quite remember what ended up happening there, but this offense really settled in. Kyle McCord settled in. Here, I'll read you his stat line right now. 19 of 29, 320 yards. That's a career high for him. And then 2 touchdowns, 81.9 QBR. Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, what more do you want me to say about Marv? I mean, he's just a freak of nature. He's one of the best college football players I've ever watched. He is amazing. That 2nd and 33. And I don't even know what happened there. Very bad snap. Kyle McCord has to go back to handle it. Ends up flipping it ahead to Chip Trainum, risking the fumble. Trainum's able to catch it. He goes down. That's a loss of, 23 yards. And just then on 2nd down and 33, Buckeye backs against the wall. Kyle McCord takes a shot for Marvin Harrison Jr., and it is just the most perfect throw. You could not have placed the ball any better for as talented of a receiver as Marvin Harrison Jr. is. Back shoulder catch. I mean, that pitch and catch right there, just absolutely phenomenal. That was exactly what you wanted to see if you are an Ohio State fan. Kyle McCord being able to hit that pass over the defender, and for Marvin Harrison Jr. to be able to bring it down. I mean, I believe he even got 2 feet in bounds, if I'm remembering correctly, back to that play. I think he got both feet down, and I've been very impressed with the way that Kyle McCord has played over these past 2 weeks. He's stepped up. He's played really well. Again, besides the fact that the offense has to come away with touchdowns in the red zone, that has to change. There's also one position group that just needs to figure itself out, and it needs to figure itself out fast because it got bullied by the Maryland defensive front today. Purdue has a lot of great edge rushers, and of course, when you go play teams like Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, those are going to be some teams that have a really good pass rush and are going to be able to create pressure on Kyle McCord. It's this offensive line. This offensive line has some real problems. Now, there were times throughout this game where the pass protection was very good, and Kyle McCord was able to sit in the pocket, take his time, and be able to deliver a good ball to a receiver downfield. But more often than not, this offensive line is missing assignments. They're missing blocks on run plays. This is exactly why Ohio State was not able to get the run game going today. Yes, not having Travion Henderson did hurt, but this running back stable is too deep to just really struggle as much as they did. Also kind of questioned where Dallin Hayden was in this game. Chip Trayanum only averaged 3.1 yards per carry. Mayan Williams only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. Did have an 11-yard run. If you take that run out of there, maybe that was only a 2 or 3 yard gain. You're looking at a stat line of him like 6 carries for maybe 14 yards, which is just over 2 yards per carry. Of course, the strength of Mayan Williams able to turn that run into a little bit more, but that's exactly why the run game struggled the way that it did in this game. The offensive line, when you were supposed to have a guard go over and pull to try to block someone on the other side to open up a hole, open up a lane, they just flat out miss the assignment, and it turned into, knowing Chip Trayanum, knowing some of the workhorses that Ohio State has in their running back room, it turned what would have been maybe an 8-yard gain, again, we'll never know for sure, into a 2 or 3 yard gain, which is absolutely massive and absolutely huge. And this is an offensive line that Maryland has very good play on the defensive line. I talked about that in my game preview and prediction. This Ohio State offensive line was going to have to step up and was going to have to start to figure some things out. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Maryland was able to generate 3 sacks here in this game, 5 tackles for loss in this game. And this is just an Ohio State offensive line that, no matter any way you slice it, needs to figure itself out. I don't know if they need to go into practice this week and just say, all right, nobody's starting, everyone, we're starting fresh on the offensive line. Because especially when you get to that game there against Penn State and you have to face guys like Chop Robinson and others that are immaculate at being able to create pressure to the quarterback. Penn State is one of the highest sack producing teams in the nation right now. This is going to be an Ohio State team that is really, really going to struggle. Imagine if this offensive line was able to more consistently. Now, I'm not saying they don't do it at all. There are times where Ohio State's offensive line is very good in run protection. They're very good in run blocking. They're very good in pass protection. Even when you take a look at these wide receivers, I know there was a hold, I believe, on Emeka Egbuka on the outside here on one of these plays. But, when you take a look at even the wide receivers, some of our wide receivers have blocked better than some of our offensive linemen have, which is a very, very good problem to have, but it's also a problem that needs to be addressed on the offensive line. This offensive line needs to figure itself out. They cannot be missing assignments as often as they are, especially with some of the teams that are coming up here on the schedule. And if this Ohio State offense was not able to settle in and the defense didn't force those couple of takeaways, who knows? Maybe Ohio State still would have won the game, but maybe we're looking at a final scoreline of like 37-30 or 37-34 or something like that. This is an offensive line that's got to be able to figure itself out. Now, there's also a little bit, I don't necessarily want to say blame on Kyle McCord, but there is a little bit of concern with Kyle McCord with the fact that, again, he's still relatively inexperienced. He's still relatively young. He needs to learn when it's time to get rid of the football. He needs to be able to feel the pressure a little bit better. And instead of taking a sack, just throw the ball away. That's what Kyle McCord's going to have to learn. Other than that, I've been very impressed with some of the throws that Kyle McCord's been able to make, especially that 2nd and 23 to Marvin Harrison Jr. And when you move over to the other side of the ball, I think this defense is absolutely fantastic. Yes, it had its struggles in this game here against Maryland, but this was in this was in Ohio State defense that I know only had 2 sacks today, but it felt like they should have had a whole lot more. Generated 5 tackles for loss. This is the defensive line that is really starting to create pressure, is really starting to just do everything that Ohio State fans have wanted this defensive line to do throughout the first 4 games of the season. The defensive line's really stepping up. This linebacking unit's playing fantastic. The secondary was able to force 2 takeaways today. That's going to start to really flip around. And this is still an Ohio State defense that is the only team in the nation that is not allowed a play of over 40 yards. The only team in the nation that is not allowed a 40-yard play, even against a Maryland offense that maybe besides Notre Dame is probably the best offensive unit that they've faced all year, which is absolutely mind-blowing. The steps that this defense have taken is immaculate. It is exceptional. Really impressed with the way this Buckeye defense is playing, and I'm thoroughly impressed with the way the offense has been playing too. But this is an offensive line that if Ohio State wants to avoid some of these scares and wants to be able to compete at its highest level possible, the offensive line has got to start to settle in, has got to start hitting their assignments, and has got to start being the Ohio State offensive line that we have seen over the past couple of seasons. And one more quick little note here. I'm done talking about the game. I want to talk to the very select few fans of Ohio State out there. I saw an article put out, I believe it was on 11 Warriors Bucknuts. I don't know. It was some Ohio State site that just made me laugh. Ryan Day needs to be on the hot seat. The article title was something like that. And I don't know who wrote it, and I'm not going to put the name out there. But seriously, Ryan Day hit 50 wins in this past game. He is 50-6 as a head coach. Now, I know the pressure at Ohio State is not to rack up wins. It is to beat Michigan. It is to get to the college football playoff. It is to win national championships. That is the pressure that Ryan Day is under. But you have to realize, he hit 50 wins in 56 games. He's the fastest coach to hit 50 wins since Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson, he is arguably, not even arguably, he is a top 5 head coach all time. And let's go ahead and take a little bit of look at what the team on the other side of the border does, right? The team north of us did with Jim Harbaugh. They did not panic. Jim Harbaugh lost to Ohio State, I believe, 4 or 5 years in a row. And they did not panic. They did not fire him. There were these select few Michigan fans that were like, he can't beat Ohio State. I don't care if he's a Michigan man. He needs to get out now. And look at what happened. Michigan is now one of the better teams in the entire country. They, in most people's opinions, including myself, have leaped over the Ohio State Buckeyes in terms of what the recent standard is in the Big Ten. And recent, I mean like over the past 2 or 3 years. Michigan has really stepped up and being able to take that top spot, or at the very least have them and Ohio State be in the exact same weight class in terms of Big Ten supremacy, because Ohio State's dominated the Big Ten for however long. Michigan is finally showing up here, and it took patience, right? It took patience. It took a lot of waiting for Jim Harbaugh to really be able to find his stride. And you know what? He's found it. And he has this team competing for national championships, as well as beating Ohio State and winning the Big Ten. Now, let's go back and take a look at another example. Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart arguably is the best head coach in college football right now, besides Nick Saban. Kirby Smart's probably the best head coach that is out there right now. And you look and you see all the people that doubted Kirby Smart, that said he will never win anything big. He will never be able to get past the Alabama Crimson Tide. Look at what's happened now. Georgia's won back-to-back national championships, and Kirby Smart's one of the highest paid head coaches in the country. He's one of the most respected head coaches in the country. It's because he's one of the best head coaches in the country. Now, I did not say all of that to say Ryan Day is going to be the next Jim Harbaugh, or Ryan Day is going to be the next Nick Saban, or Ryan Day is going to be the next Chris Peterson or Kirby Smart. That's not what truly I believe. But Ryan Day is a very, very solid head coach. He wins football games, and this is going to sound very unlike an Ohio State fan of me. I think there are a lot of people out there that gladly would be able to give up a loss to, and I think Michigan fans feel this way. I think Michigan fans gladly would give up a loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes for a national championship. I know there's a fellow YouTuber out there, College Football with Sam, that I believe said that in a video that he posted before the season went along when talking about this exact same topic. Should Ryan Day be on the hot seat? No. The answer to that is no. And any sort of just throwing out that Ryan Day needs to be on the hot seat is pure blasphemy. I don't understand it at all. He is winning football games, and I know the games that matter. Trust me, as an Ohio State fan, I know the games that matter. That's Michigan, that's the playoff, and that's the national championship. But you got to look at the full body of work. And the full body of work is a lot more impressive than the 2 or 3 or 4 games that he's ended up losing to a team that he may have just been outcoached by, a team that just played better than his side did. Ryan Day is not going anywhere anytime soon. That is my personal belief. And until there is reasonable expectation for me to believe otherwise, Ryan Day is the coach in Columbus, and the fire and the passion and the energy that he showed in that game against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, especially after the game, he is willing to fight and give up everything for his team. I don't know how there are some Ohio State fans that can still say, I do not want Ryan Day as my head coach. I don't want Ryan Day coaching this team, especially after he is willing to give up so much for this team. And after he is willing to say all of the things he said about this team, because it really is Ohio against the world in his mind. And I don't know if there's really anyone with a better mindset that could be coaching this football team right now. I would feel like if you're the coach of Ohio State, you want to have that Ohio against the world mentality. It's going to make your team stronger. It's going to make you stronger. It's just going to make everybody stronger. So that is my little kind of piece on what I have to say about Ryan Day. I know the narrative. I know he can't beat Michigan, but this is the same narrative that happened with Jim Harbaugh for 4 or 5 years. Let's give it some time here, people. And this is an Ohio State team that, as a whole, I think is playing really, really well right now. Are they playing their best football? No. And I think that's very, very clear to a lot of people. You got a road game against Purdue. Don't need to remind Buckeye fans what happened the last time you went on the road to play in West Lafayette. But Penn State is coming up. You got a road game against Wisconsin here. Minnesota could be a little bit of a tricky game, especially especially offensively, considering the style of defense Maryland plays. Or Minnesota plays. However, Michigan was able to rack it up on them. I think Ohio State will be fine in that one. And then you have the game against Michigan. A lot of tough games coming up. A lot of very interesting things to talk about. Maryland gave this team a really, really good fight. And I think Maryland's going to prove to do some great things. Who knows? Maybe they even pull off an upset against Penn State or Michigan this year. Or at the very least, they lose those 2 games but win the rest of them and go 9-3. We're talking about Maryland being the 4th best team in the Big Ten Conference once it's all said and done. But the Ohio State Buckeyes, in a tough test, are able to survive the Maryland Terrapins, and it's on to West Lafayette next week before we really get into the meat of the back half of this schedule. Just want to appreciate all you guys for watching again and listen to me ramble about what I have to say about Ohio State football. There goes my phone, but hey, not too worried about it. The video's over. Hey, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. Go Buckeyes, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Goodbye.